This is my 3 tips for fine leather in Mabinogi. The first tip is where to farm fine leather in Mabinogi. Per the Mabinogi wiki, certain monsters such as the brown gremlin, gray gremlin, kobold, giant wood jackal, giant wild boar, argus, and giant brown bear, to name a few notable examples, are dungeon creature spawns. Using this information, we can trace which dungeons to tackle to provide us with fine leather. Starting with brown gremlins and gray gremlins, these guys are typically found in Barry Intermediate and Barry Advanced. Kobolds are typically found in Math Dungeon. Giant wood jackal, giant wild boar, argus, and giant brown bear are found in Fiod Advanced, and is arguably one of the best dungeons to farm fine leather. And while I did mention dungeons, the Mabinogi wiki also mentions that advanced shadow missions drop fine leather in the game. Shadowcast City, Lingering Darkness, Fomor Attack, and All Out War are some great shadow missions to farm fine leather. Out of the suggested advanced shadow missions, I personally like Advanced Fomor Attack because of the higher spawn concentration of monsters, and plenty of shadow wizards that drop Eric crystals for commerce. Now, some of you guys might be asking which is the best method to farm fine leather? At this point, I want to put a quick disclaimer as it will be heavily based on opinions of myself and several other people. To keep this fair, I'll be going over pros and cons, so that you guys can have an informed decision on what content to do in order to farm fine leather. The general consensus for now is that Fiod Advanced seems to be the best option to farm fine leather, because you can take advantage of Tuesday's dungeon drop rate bonus. Additionally, the end chest of this dungeon drops important materials related to progression and commerce. To name a few examples, these are gold, spirit gems, intermediate reforging tools, and refined catalysts. Refined catalysts are used to craft finest vanilla-scented candles for a commerce-related bartering item. Since we talked about the pros about this particular dungeon, it's time for the downsides. The main downside is that you would need to buy a pass at 40,000 gold from the researcher near Dunbarton, so depending on the price and amount of fine leather you will get, this will determine if it's worth going through this method. The other downside is that the dungeon itself can be quite tedious for 2 reasons. You will be spending a good chunk of your time going through the hallways, and having to unlock empty doors with keys, which takes away potential spawn points. Additionally, it's worth pointing out that the first few rooms do not spawn the giant wood jackal, giant wild boar, argus, and giant brown bear, because the first few rooms will mainly spawn werewolves, snakes, and rats. Advanced shadow missions are also a great method to farm fine leather in the game. All Out War is a nice and lazy way to farm fine leather because you can technically just stand in one spot and have the monsters come to you. However, the main downside is that there aren't enough monster spawns. Shadowcast City and Lingering Darkness mainly suffer from the low spawn concentration and the somewhat lengthy walking distance to the next spawn point. Additionally, while you can clear Lingering Darkness without a support puppet accessory to find the spawn locations, it can be quite annoying and a time sink having to look around for them. Fomor Attack is probably one of the best shadow missions to actively farm fine leather, because you have a giant room at the entrance that spawns waves of monsters, and then the distance between the rooms in the hallway isn't as bad. The main downside to this shadow mission is the fact that the regular skeleton monsters have a very small drop rate for fine leather, unlike their bronze, silver, and gold counterparts. There's also more regular skeletons compared to the bronze, silver, and gold skeletons. This next tip is how to improve your drop rate chances for fine leather that is only obtainable in-game and without using the cash shop. I want to mention that certain days in Mabinogi give their own buffs. For example, Tuesdays offer an increase in dungeon item drop rate, so ideally you should be farming fine leather on Tuesdays in Advanced Fiod Dungeon to take advantage of the drop rate bonus. There are currently no specific days in the game that give a drop rate bonus for shadow missions, because there is no explicit mention of any drop rate bonuses for shadow missions. The master title of ingredient hunting also increases leather drop rate. If you also use the life skill Dan's second title known as Who is Known Far and Wide, you can amplify the master title of ingredient hunting even further to have a better chance of obtaining fine leather. This next section is mainly to improve your quality of life in terms of obtaining fine leather and fine leather straps. The first key important ingredient is obtaining the Grandmaster tailoring talent, because there is a chance of refunding some materials when using talent-related skills. This means that you can potentially get more fine leather straps than the amount of fine leather you initially started with. For example, let's say I have 20 fine leather and I have the Grandmaster tailoring talent activated, and I decide to craft fine leather straps. I can somehow have at least a total of 31 fine leather straps, which is more than what I started with. After going over the Grandmaster tailoring talent, I highly suggest obtaining a doll bag and a support puppet while farming fine leather. This is so that the summoned dolls from your doll bag will pick up the leathers while you are attacking monsters. Going back to the Fiat Advanced Dungeon example, if you have a support doll, you can see the correct orb to open the door. However, before you decide to release or open the door, you should hit all of the incorrect orbs so that more monsters will spawn in order to maximize the dungeon spawns for a better chance at obtaining fine leather. That's it for this video. If you guys found this video useful or informative, please subscribe, like, or share this video. Thanks!